here today, Sarah, a finalist in the 2022 edition of the Miss Canada Pageant. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Thank you. For those that don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I was born in Toronto. I lived briefly in the United States with my father to finish up high school, and then I came back here to do a degree at Queen's University. That was short-lived. I moved to greener pastures at Concordia, and I finished my degree in English literature. Now I'm working on putting together an anthology of neurodivergent poetry to make sure that that group is accurately represented.
Amazing. Obviously, we're talking because you're in the final for Miss Canada. Congratulations, by the way. You must be so
Thank
excited.
you. Nervous and excited, yeah.
How did you feel when you received the email to say you'd made it into the final?
Surprised. I mean, not surprised that I was accepted, but just surprised to hear back because I wasn't sure if it was still happening because of the pandemic. And I had applied, I guess, very early on. So it had been a few months before I heard anything. So I was kind of caught off guard. Yeah.
What inspired you to get involved and apply for the Miss Canada pageant?
I'm sure this is a cliche story in the pageant world, but it's not something that I thought I would ever do. And then one morning I woke up feeling very beautiful. And I don't mean on the outside, I mean very capable and energized. And just, I heard people talk about radical self-love, and I've always had a great appreciation for myself, but it really hit me that one morning. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to sign up for this pageant. It's going to be great. And so far, it's been an amazing experience.
I love that. Is there any specific things you did, do you think, to manifest that kind of feeling? Because I'm sure that that's something that most people would like to feel in their life.
It was a long process. It started when I was 25. I had a lot of struggles growing up, and I didn't always feel like myself, and I always had imposter syndrome when I tried to do something that I thought was great or just a big thing. And then I got diagnosed with ADHD, and it kind of reframed how I thought about myself, and it stopped me in my tracks for a little bit because I sat there and I thought, maybe all these ideas of self-doubt that I had are justified and I can't do everything I want to do. But then I decided that that was not the best way to think about things. If you're always honoring those negative thoughts, you're always going to have negative outcomes. So I just started working on talking to myself kinder when I'm alone. And then one day, I guess I just woke up and it clicked. And it's not the same every day. And I tell people, I heard this from a mentor of mine, beauty is a work of art. You're not going to feel pretty or complete every day, but you just keep working at it. And the big picture is going to speak for itself.
That's really great advice. Thank you. Have you competed in a pageant before?
No, I've done different types of competitions, speech arts competitions, dance competitions, but never anything like this.
Okay, so you're understanding the realm of the competitive world.
I struggle with competition, especially seeing everybody's pageant pages and just reading through the stories. I think the judges are going to have a very hard time because we're all just amazing in different ways. And so I just want to shout out to all the girls. If you guys are seeing this, congratulations for how far you've gotten this far.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a beautiful thing about this competition. You have dozens of women who are all high achievers with amazing causes and doing great things for their community. And it's really beautiful to have the opportunity to connect with those sort of people.
Yeah, it's definitely a networking opportunity. I'm really excited.
How are you preparing in the lead up to the pageant?
I have been kind of trying to get to know myself more, especially since my ADHD is a relatively recent diagnosis, and there are some some things that I do and I never considered, hey, maybe I'm not living as authentically as I can. I want to make sure that I put my best foot forward in the pageant and show people who I really am. And that has been a struggle for me in the past. I've always felt, maybe there was something different that needed to be hidden. And now it's more, this is the thing about me that needs to be seen. So I'm just kind of focusing on that. Aside from working on myself, I am buying the wardrobe. I've been running to the Bay. I've been there like 5 times. I did take a makeup class. I don't do makeup on myself at all, but it was very overwhelming. There's so many brushes and like 5 products to put on your face before you put on your face.
Yeah. Yeah. I have not taken a makeup class, but I have been watching makeup YouTube videos. There was a lot more steps than I thought there was going to be, but I'm getting the hang of it now. It's all coming together. Practice makes perfect, right?
Or progress. At least it makes progress at the
Yes.
very least.
Yeah, at the very least. Other than taking home the crown, what are you hoping to achieve by being involved with the pageant?
Whether I win or lose, I'm going to be doing the same thing, which is advocacy for ADHD and autism and kind of trying to grow in that space. And the crown would be a great stepping stone, just to widen my audience. But for me, it's the difference between taking the stairs or taking the escalator. I'm going to get there. I just,
that's a great
the help would be
way of
great.
putting it. Yeah, that's having the platform to reach more people. That's certainly, which I mean, we'll get it either way. At the gala final, you'll have a chance to do the live interview questions, and if nothing else, there'll be a room of 100 people there to speak to. So, it's good having the ability to affect change through it.
As long as I reach one person or I can affect change for one person, that's what's really important. I know that I'll need to be speaking to the whole room, but chances are, everybody has their different set of experiences. So maybe not everybody is going to relate to my cause or think it's legitimate, but if I can just inspire or inform one person, I'm happy.
Yeah, that's great. What do you think are the essential qualities that a Miss Canada should have?
Well, there's a very large list of positive qualities that Miss Canada should, or not should per se, but can have. I think they all work differently with each other. I think being a team player, being resilient, and just being dynamic or creative, those are things that I would want to see in somebody who's trying to affect change. I want to know that if they get waylaid, they can bounce back. And I want to know that when they do that, they're not just doing it with one idea. They have a contingency plan. They've brainstormed and they've thought of different things. And then their ability to network or be a team player is important because, I mean, you can accomplish a lot on your own, but you can always do more with others. And having just different perspectives is important. So I guess the last thing would be a good listener. So many people, we listen to respond and not to kind of absorb and understand. And so I would want to see that in the future Miss Canada.
Yeah, certainly. Being prepared is something that you touched on, and I'd certainly agree with that. And active listening, it's a skill. It's not something that you just have. It's something that you practice and get over time, and it's a very important one. And I agree that it would be a great asset to have that. A lot of people have a cause or a platform that they're looking to promote through the Miss Canada pageant, and you had touched on ADHD. Was that the platform that you're looking to promote awareness for?
Yes, neurodivergence in general, but with a focus on ADHD and autism, just because there are a lot of misconceptions about it. For example, if you're intelligent or you can function in the world, you can't have ADHD or autism. And I think that's very hurtful. And then this is a pageant, it's a beauty pageant full of bright, beautiful women. And there's also a lot of bright, beautiful women who are going to be watching us. So I want to speak about how research done on ADHD and autism has historically been done and studied only in male patients, young
Yeah.
boys. And the reasoning for that in some articles is simply, well, women have periods and hormones, and that would skew our research. And for me, if you know our brain is different, why wouldn't you do separate studies?
Yeah, that's what base control is for. Seems like a very
Right. So now we have
outdated reasoning.
right. And now we have this lost generation of women who have struggled and they're successful, but they're hiding themselves because they know that they're different. And this was a struggle of mine. I knew I was different. I thought it was something that I needed to hide because everybody, all the external pressure said, this is wrong.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, what age were you diagnosed at?
28.
Yeah, right.
But that was it was unofficial.
Mhm.
I still need to go to a clinical psychiatrist. And actually, that appointment just happened this April. So I had a year and a half wait in the system.
Mm.
And then the doctor, I won't obviously say his name, but he said, you have autistic characteristics, but I don't know if I want to diagnose that. That's insane to me because I waited a
Mm.
year and a half to see you, but he thinks because I'm managing or I've shown that I've managed that I don't need certain types of accommodation, and that is very wrong to me.
I agree. Yes. I can relate to that on some level. I have a cognitive condition. I'm dyslexic, and I had struggles going through school. I was very, very bad at testing. Um, Even though I knew the coursework, if a teacher asked me a question, very, very good at being able to regurgitate the information. But when it came to writing stuff down, I was just straight up failing. And I got to senior high school, so like 16, 17, and decided that I had to see someone about it because I'd gone through my entire schooling life being told, you're too smart to have a cognitive condition. You just need to apply yourself harder,
Mm-hmm.
which is a ridiculous notion. Uh, your smarts has no correlation with your cognitive function. You can be dyslexic, you can have ADHD and still be a smart, capable person. So I think that there is definitely a disconnect there.
I definitely agree. And dyslex- dyslexic, that is under the neurodivergent umbrella. And I
Yeah.
myself have dyscalculia. So me doing math, I was crying as of fifth grade. And I
Mm,
made it all the way to first year university math by myself. But again, I had all those people in my ear. Why aren't you studying harder? Where's
mm.
that 6% go on your math test? You got 94. Where's that 6%? So it's just all this feedback. And if you don't mind me asking, just because it's something that I've been thinking about, what do you think that does? When a child hears that a lot, don't you think that would negatively impact their self-worth? Did you have any kind of experience with that?
Yeah, I absolutely did. And I think that it certainly does when you're consistently trying to put in your best effort to something and being told that it's not good enough, you start to think, well, why try? I'm not good at this. It's I've found it very unmotivating, I would say. And ultimately, I had some math issues as well, and I dropped math. It was one of my favorite subjects, and I got to a stage where I just felt like I obviously don't have a natural gift for this, so I gave it up. I didn't do it in senior high school. Later on, I had the diagnosis, and I found a variety of accommodations that helped me, like having different colored tests, having specific fonts. And now my professional job, very, very math heavy. I do spreadsheets miles long with dozens and dozens of crazy calculations. And if I didn't have the diagnosis, I would have never even considered going back to that. And uh, so many girls go undiagnosed for neurodivergence. So the chances were that it was very high that I wasn't going to have that diagnosis. I think it's something like 75% of girls with ADHD go undiagnosed. That is
Yes.
a ridiculous statistic. And as you'd mentioned before, it's much more common to diagnose boys, but the way it presents in girls and boys is very, very different. So unless that's acknowledged, then that statistic is not going to get any better.
Right. And as I mentioned before, the diagnostic tests are based on boys. So it was very
Yeah.
frustrating to sit there and have those questions asked and think, but I'm a woman. And you're asking,
Hmm.
questions from the 1990s based on little boys.
Yeah.
But also the way that women are socially conditioned, you know, people with ADHD, they have sensory processing issues and sometimes emotional regulation issues. And if
Yes.
that happens in a woman where she's upset, maybe the
You're just
sound is
being a
too loud.
woman.
Yeah, you're sensitive
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
hysterical, and so that's very invalidating.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was actually, when I read your Miss Canada page, I had seen that this was your platform, so I was doing some reading before we had a chat, and my brother has ADHD, and so I'm familiar with how it presents in boys. He's also on the autistic spectrum, and I decided to read up on how it presents in girls because it goes undiagnosed so much. And I mean, reading the list as a teenager, I could have been assessed for it and probably ticked off most of the things, which is very interesting. It's something that never occurred to me because for me, these are things that are just normal. The list was like being talkative, being a daydreamer, messy, liking doodling. You mentioned
Yeah,
sensitivities to like food, noises, fabrics, being emotionally sensitive. I just thought that was being a girl.
yeah. Well, and that's what we're told too. And
Yeah.
so I feel like, in essence, we're being told suffer. And
Unnecessarily, yeah.
I
It's
shouldn't
very
laugh
true.
after that, but that's my mission, to kind of, not to kind of spread awareness, but to definitely spread awareness. And also, when I was studying, I wanted to be a poet, and I had really good work the first year. My professors were very impressed, and I just couldn't produce the same the second year. And I read that
Mhm.
a symptom or condition of autism is that you're consistently inconsistent. And I was like, well, that
Mm.
makes sense, because these couple months, this semester, I just don't feel like I can apply myself.
Mm.
But there was no help for me. And then I had a teacher tell me that I wasn't cutthroat enough to thrive in the industry, and that I didn't create a long enough narrative in my story. And I thought, well, how can I keep a narrative when my brain keeps going left, right, up, down? Now
Mm.
I know it's ADHD, and there is a place for that kind of writing and that kind of poetry that doesn't seem to have a narrative,
Yeah.
because the narrative is ADHD, and I should be able to publish, and so should other people, even if what they want to publish is just 3 or 4 lines, because even though those lines are great, they didn't have the perhaps attention span that day to sit down and finish the poem. I want to make sure that those voices are heard. I'm starting with poetry and short stories, but eventually I want, to expand to essays. And I do have other, 5 and 10 year plans that don't revolve around publishing per se,
Mm.
but maybe starting a community center. I saw that you talked about art therapy, and that made me happy, because my idea would be to create a community center that offers art therapy, exercises
Mm.
for people with autism, because it might be hard for them to go to a gym, and also
Yeah.
maybe an industrial kitchen, because I personally find it difficult to cook every day. I get exhausted, and
Yeah.
just the steps from buying, chopping, cooking, dishes, that's a lot.
Mhm.
So to have an industrial kitchen where there are volunteer staff who will clean up the mess and all you do is the meal prep,
Mm.
I think that would help a lot of people. So that's like my 5 to 10 year goal, is to kind of set that up in Montreal.
I love that. I love that. You touched on wanting to help spread works by people that are neurodivergent because their perspective is valid and it should be
Right.
out there. I believe you had a festival that you have been working on.
I had worked on it previously. It was actually a few years ago. It was in 2018. And it was at my university. It was a literary festival geared towards giving voices to marginalized people, people of color, people who, gender differences, just anybody who wasn't heard. And it really, really affected me deeply. I did not finish my final project for that festival because of how deeply I was affected by it. And there was some other stuff going on in the university climate, some investigations into professors that had mistreated some students. So this festival was kind of just to give the students a safe space. And I realized that I did not feel safe. I was creating the safe space and I didn't feel safe. And I was struggling at the time with undiagnosed ADHD. And when I tried to speak with my professor at the time and say that I was struggling, I was told once again, just apply yourself harder. And so it was a good mission. The festival went without a hitch, but my final project after it, which was to reflect on the festival, I never handed that in.
Yeah. I mean, something that it doesn't have a time limit on it. Obviously, you're not at the university anymore, but running a festival is a great achievement. So maybe just to fulfill yourself at some point, you can look back and reflect on that.
I would love to speak with that professor again because she was brilliant. I mean, obviously, if you don't know that the person you're speaking with has a cognitive condition, you can't accommodate. But she was brilliant and just an amazing mentor and very for the student body, it was honestly a pleasure working with her.
Yeah, lovely. How did the festival operate? Was it like a series of live readings?
We actually had some famous authors come and read from their works, and it happened in the university. It wasn't necessarily like we didn't book any big theaters. We wanted to occupy the university. I wouldn't necessarily call it rebellion, but just to let the students know that we were there. And, you don't have to go far to find support, because I know that a lot of the student body was raw because of what was happening at Concordia. And of course, there are always minorities and other marginalized groups that, you don't even know they have something to say until you put out a call for submissions and they come knocking on your door.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's great that you're engaging people so that giving them opportunity to voice their voice.
I would like to do more of it. And I guess I'm creative and I'm coming up with a lot of ways, and it's just very overwhelming. Like, which one do you sit down with first? They're all exciting and they're all big moves to make, so you can't do them all at once.
Yes, absolutely. Also, COVID. We haven't been doing anything for a couple of years. So,
well, yeah, I used to go help out at a food bank, and I haven't been doing that since the pandemic because they were selective with the types of volunteers they took and stuff like that because of health issues. And we were asked to either submit a video of us doing something good or ask for a donation jar. And I just thought, well, it's difficult for us to get out there right now and showcase what we do, especially in Montreal, where we had this 8 p.m. curfew, which was crazy for like 6 months. Yeah. Things are getting better now. I think you guys have foregone the masks.
Oh, we've pretended like COVID is over here.
Well, we're still here with the masks, and I've been practicing my makeup. I take off the mask and it's like my face is on the mask.
Yeah. I've seen online there's like a little plastic insert that you can get to keep the mask from ruining your makeup. If we're still wearing masks in Montreal, I may have to invest in one of those.
Yeah, well, I hope that it goes away in time for the pageant.
We'll see. It's less than a month. I don't know if much will change.
Are you excited to come down here, or have you been to Montreal before?
I have. The first place that I went to when I came to Canada was Montreal, and I fell in love with it. It is a beautiful city. I have not done any traveling since COVID hit. Normally, I love exploring Canada. I have been to many, many of the provinces, and I'm so excited to go back. Really great food in Montreal. Not that, I mean, Canada in general has great food because the diversity of cuisines that are available, but the pasta in Montreal, I'm very excited for that.
Well, it's going to be beautiful. You're coming back right as things get pretty. And I think we're going to the old port too. So we're going to have the cobblestone streets and
Ah,
a
great.
good.
I was telling one of the girls I was chatting to the other day, her dream is to go to Italy. It's like, we'll have to take you to the old quarter. It's the closest you're going to get in Canada.
Yeah, but it's still beautiful and it's not going to cost you $5,000.
Yes, yes, indeed. Still gorgeous, but a lot closer to home. So I saw on your profile that you work with some other organizations. You had listed the Canadian Cancer Society, Doctors Without Borders, and the Canadian Red Cross. What sort of involvement do you have with them?
I do donate monthly to the
Okay.
Canadian Cancer Society. I lost my mom to cancer and I have a
I'm sorry
fairy
to hear that.
godmother. If that's the best way to put it. She's a woman that I met when I was 18 years old, and she kind of took me under her wing as a mentor. And she sends me little gifts every holiday. And she also was diagnosed with cancer. And when I looked at the stats, 1 in every 2 people is going to get diagnosed. And
That's terrifying.
that's you took the word right out of my mouth. That was the next thing that was going to come out. That's terrifying. And to research cancer, it's billions of dollars. I mean, I have a background in biology, so I understand that cancer is different for everybody. It affects your DNA in a different spot for everyone. So there isn't really a universal cure. And that's why we need to keep, for now, that's why we need to keep doing this research. So I donate there monthly. And then I also called on behalf of the Canadian Cancer Society to raise money, specifically for children with brain cancer.
Okay. What drew you to that aspect of it in particular?
Actually, I'm happy to help in general. Whatever campaign they were working on is what I called for. So it wasn't my personal choice per se. But also children, if I could help, it would be to give somebody a future, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a really nice sentiment.
And then the Canadian Red Cross. I called at the time that the BC forest fires were happening. And people said, why do I need to donate? You know? And I would say, well, we need to buy masks because the people living there, they can't breathe in the smoke. It's not
deadly.
healthy.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people had to be displaced from their homes or lost their homes. And we needed to set up temporary shelters. And that's also costly. And I'm not sure if the statistic has changed in the few years since I was actively calling for them, but the Canadian Red Cross was actually one of the only Red Cross organizations that had a mobile hospital that we could just send out onto the ocean anywhere in the world to help.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, it sounds like a very Canadian thing. Happy to go out and help whoever needs it.
Yes, yeah, you're right.
Which is a good thing. I like that about Canada.
Me too. Well, I think you're from Australia, right?
That is correct, yes. Was born and grew up in Australia, but then came to Canada first as a teenager and have since moved over here full time. And I fell in love with the country when I got here, and it's my forever home. So Canada it is.
Well, we're happy to have you. I'm having I had a bit of an opposite experience. As a teenager, I had a bunch of Australian pen pals in the Gold Coast and Brisbane.
Okay.
Yeah, and I really, really wanted to go there. I've not yet visited, and my pen pals have actually moved to the UK, both of them.
Oh, wow. Australians like to travel. Yeah, that's a thing.
You guys have the best weather. You must not think so. You must think the snow is great, but
I find the snow very novel. I'm also very, very pale. If you like beaches and sun and the warm, Australia will be a dream for you. I burn if I walk to the letterbox, so not so much for me.
I do have a Persian background, so my skin is slightly olive toned, and I drink the sun.
Yes, my partner is similar. His family is from South America, and he doesn't get in the sun much now because I never go in the sun. But soon as there is sun, he tans beautifully. I'm very envious.
I used to never burn, and now I burn. And then somebody told me, yeah, it's because your skin gets thinner as you get older. And I was like, stop. No, I don't.
Oh dear. No, my skin is perfectly fine. You mentioned, yeah, you're interested in visiting Australia. It is a long flight,
For
but it is
Canada?
very nice once you get there. I would say that if you were going to do it, you'd want to stay for at least 2 weeks because that's about how long it takes to get over the jet lag. We're pretty much opposite time zones. But it's also very, very big, as in like how Canada is very, very big. Like you can drive for days and still not hit the other side. Australia's got that grand size as well. But yeah, if you ever do find yourself heading to that part of the world, let me know. I'll give you an itinerary of all the cool things to see.
Yeah, I mean, I love doing touristy things, but I also kind of want to check out some local spots. Where are you from?
So I grew up in the mid-north coast, which is like a country part, sort of between where Brisbane and Sydney are, maybe
Oh,
halfway.
okay.
But later on, I moved to Sydney, which was the biggest city near me.
I'm a big fan, but I'll.
Yeah, I was very excited to move to the city. I grew up in a very, very small town. And now I like the idea of small town and nature. At the time, I wanted to go to where the buildings were and where the excitement was. So I was very excited to get out and about. And now having lived in cities for a decade, I'm like, yeah, I could be in a small town. It was pretty nice, actually.
I mean, they both have their pros and cons.
They
So
do. They really do. Yeah, it's good to be able to find a balance, I think. So you had mentioned that you spent some time living in New Jersey. How did you find that transition going from Canada to America?
abrupt.
Yeah, okay.
um, so my mom had passed away, and she was a single mom, and my dad was a businessman with his wife at the time in New Jersey, and I didn't really know them. I mean, I knew them; they were in my life since I was young. But he had left
Yeah.
Canada when I was 9, and then I
Okay.
only saw him once a year until my mom passed away. So it was just a big shift leaving, friends and family.
Mm.
And looking back, I wish that I was more open to the experience because I did miss out on a lot. I, of course, made new friends and I lived in a Spanish community. So I
Okay.
could have learned Spanish. I could have learned how to salsa and bachata, but
Hmm.
I was just very upset over the loss of my mom. And it was very hard for me to, I guess, be happy without having guilt.
Justifiably so. Yeah.
I think I did have some very good times, and I would, not that I don't love Canada because I do, and Montreal is my home, but I would love to go live there again just for like a few years. It's a different feeling.
Yeah, certainly. I think when you actively make the decision to move somewhere, the intention you go in with is different, and that does have an effect on your experience for sure.
Aside from Canada, have you visited, and Australia, have you been anywhere else? Did you go to the States or visit or?
Yeah, so I actually went to university in the States for a while.
Oh, which one?
Western Illinois University, which is in Illinois, as the name suggests. I currently report into an office in the United Kingdom for my work. So I spend some time there. I run an office in New York, so I spend a lot of time in New York. I have been to New Zealand a lot for work. I work a lot in China. I've been to Europe on holidays. So yeah, a little bit everywhere.
Oh, wow, you're very well traveled.
I'm getting up there, getting up there. It was a little pre-COVID. I would travel a lot for work, probably upwards of 3 months a year. I was outside of Canada, but this was my home basis and has been for a long time. And then when it stopped COVID, we went into lockdown. It was like I was living in airports, and all of a sudden I was living in my apartment, and that was a transition and a half. But we got there. We got there.
I live in a relatively small apartment, so working and sleeping and eating and looking after my cat all in one spot, I went a little bit
Stir
stir
crazy.
crazy.
Same.
I'm so ready, and I wouldn't call myself an extrovert. I'm very intuitive and introspective, but I'm so ready just to like get on a bus full of 40 women. It's time.
Ready for the Renaissance period. We're all just like, come on, so exciting. Yeah.
I'm so like, I remember going to the Dominican Republic and not like, I wasn't even excited about booking the flight or even on the plane. I wasn't excited. We get to the hotel. I wasn't excited. I got to the ocean and I was like a happy, like 5 years old, just like frolicking in the waves. And I just feel like that's what it's going to be like for the pageant. I'm just going to be cool and collected. And then when I get there, I'm going to be the loudest and most excited one.
We'll see. We'll see. I feel like a lot of us are going to be like that. I think normally the idea of a pageant, I've never done one before, but because there are so many like-minded, lovely women, it's something that I would get excited about. But then not having seen people for years, like the anticipation levels are so much higher. I mean, at the moment, also everything is novel, like the ability to go to a restaurant. There was years where we couldn't do something as simple as that, go out for a coffee. So I'm finding great novelty in even the most basic of things. So yes, very exciting to do it in a pageant context.
I am kind of worried about how my social skills will translate. I'm a big talker and I'm very, open. I like to hear about people. But I noticed, that my social skills have kind of slipped. Like somebody will say something to me and I'll just stare at them for like 5 seconds before I realize, oh wait, it's my turn to answer.
The back and forth. I think it's certainly a practice thing. It was funny. I started these interviews a couple of weeks ago, and when I listened to the first one back, I was like, "Did you forget how to talk to people?" So it comes back. It comes back.
Well, it makes me feel better that you've had a couple weeks of practice before doing this because I do feel out of my elements a little. I've never put a YouTube video out there or even a TikTok video.
This is my first foray into YouTube as well. I decided that I was going to start making these videos, and that's the first time I have put anything on YouTube either. And I don't have TikTok. I probably not a bit over the age group that it's targeted for, but also I think that I don't need more social media in my life. I got plenty of things that I would like to do with my spare time, and I'm trying to minimize staring at a screen and just scrolling. So, yeah.
You get trapped. You get sucked into the vortex.
Really, really. I mean, even just with the social medias that I have, time can just suck away. You're like, oh, I'm just going to have a quick flick at, insert your social media here. And I'm like, where did that half an hour go? Half an hour, my goodness. Yeah.
Oh, well, with ADHD, sometimes I get into these like intense hyper focus zones, and but I don't get to choose what I'm focusing on. So it's really frustrating. Like, I wish I could focus on something productive, but no. The other, like Saturday, I spent 8 hours on YouTube watching acrylic pour art. I found it very therapeutic, and I would like to try it. But I could not believe that I had spent 8 hours doing that. That's a full work day. I was so fascinated, impressed, but also a little disgusted with myself.
Yeah, I mean, now you're an acrylic art expert pro, as much as you can be, having never physically done it. So you never know when that's going to come in handy. I don't know if you like trivia, but that seems like the kind of thing where like, hey, I spent a day learning about that very obscure fact. I knew these answers. I'm sure it'll come in handy at some point.
Yeah, if I'm ever on that Netflix show where they give you pointless trivia.
You'll be good to go. It has been a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Of course, I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait to meet everybody.